I'm 25 today. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done a lot of stupid things. I've got myself involved with the wrong types of people. I've done things that sabotage my growth, that set me back. So guys, I just want to go over a few things that have kind of, shooken me up, some things that have helped me, and some things that can just overall help you have a better navigation and direction in life. So as far as, being young, right, we're typically, we're impatient. We want things to happen, very soon. We're sort of in a young, immature phase. Not all of us, we're all at different levels, but I think it's safe to say that when you're young, you think you have all this time, you think you have the right to own, things that are extremely valuable at a very young age, right? And as I get older, right, because I'm 25, so I'm about halfway to 30. I just think to myself that I'm like, damn, like, there's so many things that I want that I just know take a lot of time. They just take a lot of trial and error. They take a lot of learning. They take a lot of study, and they take time, and one thing I've realized about life is that, things happen in seasons, things happen in cycles. Oftentimes, our ego, like your ego is very insatiable, right? Like our human sense of self, right? That wants pleasure, that wants reward, that wants accomplishment, that wants to feel the euphoria of always winning, whether it's with money, whether it's with women, is never it's insatiable. It's never satiated. So one thing I've just learned, over the years, is to just try to be more present, right? And, as far as, just needing things to happen, that's been a struggle for me. That it continues to be a struggle for me. I think I'm a little now I'm 25. So, am I better now at 25 than I was at 20, with being just a little bit more content and a little more at ease? Yes. But am I, in a phase where I'm like, I've mastered it and I'm like, just, pretty easygoing and not really stressed about, getting the next thing? Not even close. So one thing I think that's very paramount and more important than all the tactics and strategies and things that, I talk about, is just being able to be content with where you are, right? And, taking the next step and taking the revelations as they come, right? Because life is really like a book, right? I mean, right now, like, you could think today is the worst day ever, right? You could think yesterday was terrible, but in a few days, like in 2 days, you can feel amazing. Like, you could literally be having the worst day. You could think your life sucks. You could think that it's over, that whatever you're doing isn't going to work. And then literally in 16 hours, 24 hours, you could have a huge breakthrough or do something that was very, excellent or extraordinary. And now you feel good about yourself again. So just like learning to be sort of even keeled as far as, things don't go so well, or when things do go well, especially, like me, this is very important and pertinent to like me, because I day trade, right? So, I've had weeks where I break even. I've had weeks where I've lost $200. I've had weeks where I've made $500, right? So, but during those times, right, like, I know, like, okay, if I have a shit week, I understand that that's just the nature of the game, right? Even the best traders lose money. So whatever you do, as far as your career goes, as far as your personal life, whatever it is, with your relationships, with your family, with your health, being able to take the blows, right, that are evidently going to show up in life is paramount to living a successful future, right? So I'm giving you guys this now, because if you aren't able to get good at this, get good at just being able to kind of take things moment to moment and not get so absorbed in the result of what you experience, whether it was good or bad, you're in for a long miserable life, because the nature of life is uncertainty. The nature of life is up and down, and being able and being taken away in those moments of ups and downs, and not being understanding of just trying to be even keeled and trying to just be, cool and content and calm and poised, is will be very miserable, right? Because you'll be so identified with the exterior things that are happening to you, and you won't be able to find your core and find understanding. When you understand that life has seasons, life has days and weeks where it sucks, where it's not great, you'll be able to realize, oh shit, like this is just part of the game, and it's just moving me it's just moving me closer towards my goals, right? Now obviously if you don't correct your mistakes, well, that's a different story. But as long as you're willing to learn from whatever you did, whether it was a bad trade, whether you said something to your girlfriend or your wife that turned her off, that made her upset, or whether you've relapsed into an addiction that you were doing well, let's say you had a streak where you're doing well, you weren't drinking any caffeine or you weren't watching porn, now you relapse. Being able to just be okay with those L's, those minor setbacks or minor things that get in the way, like little things that get in the way, is going to be huge, right? Because life is that is what growth is, right? If you're comfortable with something, right, and you've mastered it, there's no more room for you to grow. But if you suck at something, right, and you're failing and then you're winning and then you're failing, then winning, right? That is what's growing you. So learning to reframe the things that suck into things that are just catalysts to your growth process is going to be paramount to how you do in the future. Because people who don't do well in life, people who don't have the lives they want, people who are stressed, anxious, depressed, sad, not emotionally stable, don't have a good personal life, don't have a good financial life, are people who don't understand this concept. People think that a day where their life sucks, they identify with that one day or 1 week and think that that has to be the rest of their lives. But again, when you realize that that is just a catalyst to your growth, you come back to yourself and realize, okay, this is just what it is, right? And you don't really have too much of an emotional pull, an emotional identity with those moments, right? You just realize that it's like, all right, I'll get up tomorrow. No big deal, right? And now, obviously, I'm speaking of it right now as it's easy. It's easier said than done, right? But the more you're able to understand this, the better you'll get at it year to year, and the less emotional pain you'll feel when things don't go well. As far as money goes, money is something that I think everyone needs to understand and learn as early as possible. I think I spent a lot of time. One thing I do regret, and one thing I wish I understood earlier, maybe even in my mid-teens to late teens to early 20s, is the importance of really getting your financial game together. I spent a lot of time, especially in my early 20s, those first 2 to 3 years of my 20s, not taking money that seriously, not wanting to learn about the stock market, not wanting to learn about psychology, not wanting to learn about sales, not wanting to learn about banks and governments and, how money's stored and everything like that. And unfortunately, the older you get, right, the less you understand about money, the harder your life's going to be. And I think it's crucial that you learn how to day trade. I think it's crucial that you learn how to deal with people, how to be charismatic, how to be someone would want to buy from, right? I think it's important that you establish connections, right? That you establish good relationships with people who are high level, right? Because your ability to provide resources is directly tied to your ability to live a free life, and not only live a free life, but also attract a person, an individual from the opposite sex, right? Like, no girl, right, is going to want to be with a guy who can't provide. I'm sorry, right? And this is controversial in this day, but no woman wants to be with a guy who cannot put money on the table, right? Because if you can't put money on the table, you can't provide housing, you can't provide shelter, and you can't provide food. So a woman, right, who wants to procreate, like all of us, really do, is going to look at you like, okay, like, great, he's attractive, or maybe he's funny, but he doesn't have money, so I can't see a future with him. And I think a lot of you guys, and I know the red pill's kind of, swung back on marriage and said, how bad it is to be long-term committed, but it's important to have money, right? Even if you are a bachelor, right? Someday you might not want to be a bachelor, right? Someday you might want to settle down. And if you didn't spend time, working on your career, working on your business, working on your investing, learning how to invest, then you wasted your time. And women are now going to look at you like, damn, dude, like, you're 30, 40 years old. Why am I going to take you seriously? So those are just some things to consider, as far as money goes, and why it's important that you start to take money seriously, why you should study money and put a lot of energy and time into creating it and investing it so that you have the best possible future, right? So, that's very important. And then one last thing I'll say is that you need to spend time with yourself, right? We spend so much time with other people, right? Whether it's with, if you're in school, around friends, or around teachers, when you get home, around your family. In the modern day, the average person, man and woman, right? I think this is universal, has virtually very little time to themselves, right? And even the time that we may present itself for us to, be in contemplation or meditation or reflection, we like to escape those moments with what? Scrolling, pornography, video games. And if you want direction, if you want understanding, if you want peace of mind, if you want to have a better trajectory for at least where you're going, as far as your money, as far as your health, as far as your relationships, then you need time by yourself, right? Because when you spend time by yourself, you learn to be comfortable with the thoughts passing by in your field of awareness. And if we're always escaping the present moment because we don't like the thoughts that are passing by, then you're going to be due for a miserable life, because by default, you're discontent. If you are not able to sit for 20 to 30 minutes without a cell phone or without someone around you, you are due in for a miserable life, because by default, you're going to constantly feel the need and the desire to go do something, when in reality, sometimes the best thing to do is nothing, right? The best thing to do is just to sit, right? And our culture has sort of taught us, right, that, sitting down and doing nothing or just being is somehow counterproductive and sort of seen as being lazy, right? Like, you're just, oh, why are you being lazy? Why don't you go do something? So, and the ego doesn't like that, right? The ego always wants, like I mentioned earlier in this video, your mind is always aiming for something external, right? Whether it's a conversation with someone, whether it's going out to do something, it very rarely is able to sit down without a cell phone and just be, right? So this is something you have to work at, right? I've been on and off with meditation. I've had seasons where I do it every day, and I've had seasons where I don't do shit, right? And again, that's life, obviously. Things happen that we have to deal with, that sometimes we don't have time for ourselves. But I think being able to sit with yourself and being able to calm your mind down with, breath work or some form of stillness meditation work is huge, right? Because you're not always going to have friends around. You're not always going to have your girlfriend. You're not always going to have achievements, right? Like, there's going to be points in your life where you're not always achieving something, right? So if you feel the need to always be in a situation where you're talking to someone, or you have someone around you, or you're achieving something, then you're due for a miserable life, because you're not able to be content, at least for a period of time. I'm not saying you should just renounce materialism completely, renounce relationships, renounce money, renounce all this stuff. No, it's important that you're involved with life, that you're engaged with life, with everything that's available. But it's also important to take time to go in, right? We spend so much of our time outwardly trying to do things, outwardly trying to bring things into fruition, right? And when you're always in pursuit of something, right? When you're always working out or working or trying to just push towards something that's imaginary, oftentimes, guys, when you really think about it, everything that we pursue is imaginary, because it's always future oriented. The future is not here, realistically speaking, right? Now, obviously, we can imagine a moment in the future where something might exist, or a feeling that we might feel because of the result of us getting something. But our pursuits, right? When we're constantly pursuing something, we're in a future oriented state, and constantly being in a future oriented state breeds worriness, breeds anxiety, and breeds stress, right? So obviously, again, I'm not saying we have to pursue the things that we want. I'm not saying you don't need to pursue things, but I want to make a point that you can take it to the extreme and you can get so lost in pursuing things and being future oriented that you forget to just be, right? You forget that maybe the thing that you want is going to come to you, right? And you don't have to stress about it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to emotionally invest so much emotionally into it for it to come into fruition. We think the things that we want, we have to constantly struggle and strife. You know, we have to use so much struggle and strife and emotional like willfulness to acquire. When in reality, you know, I'm not saying that you can't be an overachiever or, you know, go the extra mile, but again, take time to reflect, take time to breathe, take time to enjoy nature, right? Life will bring what it needs to you when you need it, right? There's a saying in the Bible, I think it's in Matthew, I'm gonna butcher it, but you know, Jesus is basically saying like, hey, the birds are fed, the earth is taken care of, the trees are, you know, basically he's saying like everything happens cyclically and at its point and purpose time when it needs to happen, right? The leaves change when the leaves need to change. The birds, they chirp when they need to chirp. They mate when they need to mate. They eat when the food is available. So the same way that, you know, nature works is the same way that we work, because we're not separate. We think we're separate from this world right here. We think we're separate from what's going on in nature, but we're a part of the evolution of nature, right? And obviously human beings have a different evolution, right? Because we have a mind, but the idea and the principle is the same. So anyways, guys, these are just some reflections as a 25-year-old. You know, I have a lot to learn, you know, as far as everything, right? Relationships, health, money, spiritual ideas and principles. I still have a long way to go, but I just wanted to make this video because, you know, it's my birthday and I was just thinking about my path, you know, just how far I've come, what I've dealt with, what I've learned, and hopefully some of you guys can relate to this and take it and find it helpful. So anyways, guys, that's it. That's all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe. If you guys have any questions, comments, leave them down below. And as always, I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.